Good.
All right, I'm just gonna.
Girls, thank you very much. We'll see you
soon.
See you soon.
Lovely.
Here they all are. Hello and welcome to Avid Reader, to all of the people who are now coming into the room. We'll just give it another couple of minutes as the last few people arrive. So imagine, if you will, that you're all crowded together on the back deck of Avid, and that there's wine flowing freely and people chatting, and we're all sitting shoulder to shoulder because it's non-pandemic land in Zoom. So do imagine that you're having a lovely time. One day soon, we may be able to go back into real life. So, so that will be wonderful. Hopefully next year, we'll be able to open the doors again to events. But until then, welcome to our imaginary Zoom landscape. And now that I've just let some people in, I might just start the event off and keep an eye out for the people who are turning up. So I'd like to start this event by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we're meeting on. In this area, it's the Yagara and the Turrbal people, and I would like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and to any other elders who are here today. And I'd also like to acknowledge that because of Zoom, we are zooming out onto the lands of many different Aboriginal people, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders all over the country that we're zooming out to. Now, for those people who haven't used Zoom before, we are going to take our questions via the chat function tonight. So you'll all be on silent during the event tonight, and then on chat, you'll be able to ask questions. Now, to show you where that chat function is, in case you haven't used Zoom before, although at this stage of the pandemic, I suspect you may have, but here is, oh, just admitting some more people. Here is the chat function now. I am cheekily putting a link to the book in the chat function, which will make it very easy for you all to purchase your copy. So that link is there, and you can just pop on that at any time and head to the website. And also, if you use the keyword event, that's EVENT, that's our discount code for the next 24 hours. So if you want to go online shopping, you can use EVENT and get 10% off everything that you put in the cart, as long as it's not already discounted. That's going to discount everything else by 10%. So just a little bit of an incentive to get you shopping and to get you purchasing the book of the moment, Pattern Pulse. So, and that's it. If you want to say hello, Genevieve will be able to see it. Jen?
Hello, here is the beautiful Pattern Pulse.
Great. All right. So without further ado, I will introduce you both. So tonight we have Rachael King, who is a graphic and surface designer who lives in Brisbane, a self-confessed patternaholic. Rachael has had a varied career in marketing administration, but these days her true calling is as a licensed surface designer, which I really like the sound of that, a surface designer, and counts a career highlight as having had a fabric collection in Spotlight. And Pattern Pulse is her first book. So just before introducing Jen, I'm letting more people into the room. And now I will introduce our conversation partner today, who is Genevieve Kruyssen, who is a bookseller and the events manager at Where the Wild Things Are bookshop, which is our sister, our younger sister shop. And she loves drawing, from her design experience to create full and creative events for children and authors. She teaches and lectures within the QUT School of Design with a focus on the theoretical side of visual and experience design. So we thought that Jen would be the perfect person to be hosting tonight. So I will pass over to Jen and she will take over.
Thank you so much, Chrissy. It's such a pleasure to get to talk to you tonight, Rachael. Your book, Pattern Pulse, is so beautiful. For those of you who haven't gotten to see it, Rachael will talk us through it a bit throughout the night. But the first thing I was wondering, Rachael, would you mind telling us what is the charm of a pattern to you?
Oh, the charm of a pattern. Wow. I think there's something that kind of speaks to us on a whole lot of other different levels when it comes to patterns. There's something pleasing about a good pattern. If we see artwork around us in our everyday to day. It could be on the clothes that we wear, it could be on the wallpaper behind us, it could be on the cups that we drink from. There's a whole heap of stuff going on in the background that we're not really always aware of. And I think a really good pattern is one that you're not always aware of, because it might be subtle and it might be very, very well designed. But I think the thing that really gets us is when we see something that's beautiful, that really strikes us out. And for me, for patterns, it's always been, if I see a good pattern, I actually have an emotional response. So I'm really excited to see it, and I'd like, wow, how did that person do that? That's so beautiful, so beautiful. So yeah.
So for you, it's the charm of the creation itself as well.
Yeah, I also need to know how these things are done. That's my mind. I have an artistic background, artistic childhood, and an observer of art around me, and pattern and is something that kind of pleases my mind, or whether it's a left-sided thinking. I love artwork in of itself, but seeing a pattern, a repeating out pattern, it soothes me. I don't know what it is on a lower level. It could be something that we're pre-programmed for, is just seeing something that repeats over and it pleases us. So yes, the charm, the color, the technical, I want to know how it was created. I want to know the artwork behind it. I want to know how it was done, especially with watercolor, because I do watercolor, like this guy behind me. How did that get done? If I look at a damask, where does the technical repeat start and finish? I mean, it's mind-blowing just to think about that sometimes. But moving on from the concept behind a pattern is that whole world of creating art, and Pattern Pulse in and of itself is the title, but it also encapsulates a lot of artistry and illustration, and not necessarily doing repeat patterns, but what we call placement prints. So they might kind of go into different fields as opposed to just doing something like this backdrop. So I don't know if that answers your question, Genevieve, but
Well, thank you. I guess I particularly liked the thought of it's the marriage of like art with also the calming property of repetition. I thought that sounded interesting.
100%. And look, we've all from a very early age had pattern in our lives. I mean, it's from the rugs our mums put on us as little babies, all the way through to the clothes that we wear today. It's such an intrinsic part of our decision-making process too, and we're very aware of it on a level that we don't probably even know that we're aware of it. It's very interesting, and yes, for me, there is a calmness that comes from it. And also, I think as we kind of enter into this new phase of digital technology, we're kind of becoming more individualized in our own environment. So the options to choose are not necessarily dictated to us. We can be the masters of our own environment. Therefore, we can choose what we have in our environment. We don't have to go into Spotlight and have them tell us what we should have in our home. We can go on to Society6 and choose that little clock and that beautiful wallpaper and that curtain and that shower screen and make our own fabulous little montage of loveliness. You know, we don't have to subscribe to a certain look or feel. We can be as individual as we like. We are on the frontier of something quite spectacular, I believe. So.
Definitely. And that is very much, those individual artists is all what your book's all about. Would you mind telling us about Pattern Pulse?
Yeah, sure. So Pattern Pulse is it's an idea. So like anything that's, worth talking about, it starts in your mind, an idea. And my idea was that I wanted to have a book that I could dive into when I started my journey as a surface pattern designer. And just for clarity, the term surface designer is almost like an umbrella term for people who are in the industry that I'm in. And it means that they're the people behind who create the artwork that are applied to surfaces. Now, a subset of that is what is called a surface pattern designer, people who do know how to do technical repeats. So in putting the book together, I wanted to broaden the terminology, because whilst my particular skill set is as a surface pattern designer, there are a lot of people who don't actually have the technical repeat skills, but they're making art that is still being applied to surfaces in more and more because of the digital technologies that are available. You don't necessarily have to have that skill set. So, so that's for clarity, okay? So when I started my journey, I wanted to learn how to make beautiful patterns. My mother had a haberdashery as I was growing up, and I used to work in fabric. I'm actually a trained seamstress, and I've also been raised in an environment where you make clothes and you look at things and you put it together. And so for me, it was like, oh my God, I just need to put my art on that fabric. I was obsessed by this idea. But you have to consider when you're growing up, that was like something that happened to other people in different faraway lands. I mean, this is just a completely foreign concept. So researching and knowing how to get into that space, I mean, it was totally impossible. And as I grew up, I just became more and more focused on the fact that I needed to know. Now, as I went through careers and everything, had family, my big moment came when I was 42, and I decided that I would return to TAFE because all of my research came back to the fact that I needed to get some skills. And if I wanted to get my artwork onto anything, I really needed to find out about how to use the Adobe suite. And that meant I needed to go and get some graphic design skills. So I saw that as an investment of my time, and also allowed me to have a side hustle, which would actually be the bread and butter to creating my own business. So for me, my journey as a surface pattern designer started as a graphic designer, and I make my income that way. And then surface pattern was my joy and my side hustle. And hopefully these two would merge, and eventually this guy would take over. I can't say that that's actually happening yet, guys, but you've got to live, you've got to have it. Because let's be honest, anyone getting into this business will know fairly soon that it's a difficult road. It's a road that you have to really stay the distance if you want to see any real income out of it. So a lot of people do this for the joy of it. They do it for the fun of it. They do it for personal reasons. But if you want to make an income out of it, then there is a definite giving over to the process and turning it into a business. And that comes from having a business mind and really studying how to monetize your designs. And that's another subject entirely. I can leave that at the end of this discussion. But I'll rein myself back in again, Genevieve, and I'll talk about the artists that I chose for this book. Why did I choose the 100 artists? Okay, I chose the 100 artists because it's a nice round number, and I knew that if I wanted to have a nice chunky book full of art, then that would give a lot of scope across all of the markets that are actually within the surface design industry. So you've got people who are working in stationery, bedding, children's book illustration, you've got textiles, you've got fashion, you've got a lot of different surfaces like in homewares, you've got crockery, you've got your crockery, you've got just even things like your placemats. It could be the chair that you sit on when you're lounging around the pool. It could be the umbrella that's above your head. There's the drinking bottle that you're using with the beautiful design on it. There are so many opportunities for design to be applied or adhere to a surface. So for me, if I was going to create a book that had enough interest for everyone, it had to be broader than just the people who did textiles. It had to be broader than that. So that's why I went into interiors. And so I've got a real nod to that side of the business. But as you know, we all know the way we live our life now. We're wearing the tropical prints. We're living amongst the tropical prints. Fashion and interiors are blending and merging all the time. We want to wear those gorgeous active wear leggings down to the gym this week. Well, we can wear the tropical print on them as well. We can have all the things because this is where we are. The markets are all merging and blending.
Everything can be beautiful.
Everything can be beautiful. Absolutely. And so for me, it was about getting a nod to all those different. So from an interest factor, when you look at the book, there's an ebb and a flow to the types of art that's in there. You've got analog and you've got digital applications that are used. You've also got different treatments. You've got people who come from extremely diverse backgrounds, like the lady you're just holding up there. Okay, so that's Esther's, or who
Was that right?
Eloise. She is a fine artist. She's actually come from an extremely practiced RMIT background, and she learned how to make technical repeats. And she's really used her skill. And that lady's actually worked for anthropology, so she's actually gone to that international level of being able to put her work out on the world stage. Esther Fallon Lau, that's a beautiful example of someone who's kicking it on Spoonflower. For anyone who knows what Spoonflower is, it's an international marketplace for digital printing on fabrics. That lady is doing very well, and her work is extraordinary. She knows her market very well because she studies it. She knows the mums who buy her fabric, they keep coming back, and they keep coming back because she keeps producing the right designs. And that lady there, you've got Esther Sandler. She's got a business called Togetherness. She's very popular Melbourne artist, and she has her own label. So she's taken her work into fashion and ceramics, because that's where her passion is. That's where her desire is, to see her designs on different surfaces. So there's a lot of different crossovers. You've got the girls down in Melbourne from Ink and Spindle who use these massive big screens for screen printing. They use Adobe Illustrator to create to get the artwork into the screens on repeat, and then they will use a traditional screen printing process.
Oh wow. Yeah.
They are using their bodies daily to move paint around on the screen fabric. So there's a marrying of new processes and old processes to get these really beautiful niche businesses that are kind of coming out of it. So there's a lot of nods to different parts of the sector in the book. So yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah, wonderful. And so you really wanted to move between artists that came from both working in traditional ways as well as working purely digitally, and were also producing both digitally versus in a traditional manner?
Well, definitely, because I think that we need to be open to the fact that technology is changing. Now, I've seen a huge change in this marketplace, even in the last 5 years since I started. So what I'm attracted to, which might be to learn how to do a technical repeat from scratch, even my process isn't the step back, which is someone like Marnie Stewart, who's in here, who actually knows how to create a technical repeat called a crocus or croquet, or however you want to pronounce it. But she learned how to work. She started off with Bond's underwear, and she learned how to work out how to bring a repeat in from, your undulations from the left side and repeating in and out. And she can do it visually straight onto paper. And she's got a real technical know-how and technical skill of being able to see that. Whereas for me, I like to get my watercolor paints out. I do lots of beautiful little elements. I scan them into my scanner, and then I clean them up, and then I layer the hell out of them, and then in Photoshop, and then that's how I create mine. And then someone else might do something entirely different. Like there's a lady called Mick, The World of Mick, who's in the book, and she's really taken to doing iPad Pro art with her iPad Pro pencil, and she's just having a ball. You can see the joy in her work. So she's using the iPad Pro and the application Procreate. Fantastic, which has been a game changer for a lot of people. And if anyone on this program is in this business, they'll know about Skillshare, and Skillshare is this phenomenal database of tutorials where you can pretty much learn how to create a repeat pattern on an iPad Pro, which blows my tiny mind. And just, load it up to Spoonflower tomorrow and have some fabric sent to you. I mean, it's just
it's amazing.
Whoa, mind blowing.
I really liked the quote here from Adam Jones. in the description of Adam Jones, when it says Adam uses technology to bring balance and precision to the finished work and likens the stage of designing to when a song is mastered in a sound studio.
Oh, what a poet, that man. My goodness, he's just another level to it. Now, you know, I have to say that was possibly one of the nicest things I had to kind of bring together in the book, because it was in that moment, and, you know, he's the first guy in the book. His name is Adam. I had to go alphabetical order for my first name. It was just such a beautiful thing to read straight away, because he was right on the money. And it is in that process. Like, for instance, the girls that are right at the other end of the book, there's a studio called Willie West, and they bring in Indigenous artists' artwork, and they are also looking at the artwork and then creating rhythm and subtlety and changes of hue to create collections. So again, it's the mastering of the work in the digital process that means that you can bring it in, you know, you can do so much more for it. So what starts off as one piece of artwork then becomes many iterations for many different surfaces. So what you might design for some bed linen might be completely different designed for, say, for a cup or a water bottle. So you have to consider the surface it's going on, and it is in that process of using the digital technology that you can bring in and out colors, change hues, saturations. There's a whole world of different stuff, and Adam is a master at that, because he likes to bring in what he calls the handmadeness, or it's all those little inflections that happen when you're doing a painting, you know, that rawness, it's almost like he's got all the beautiful shades and variations in his paintbrush strokes. There you go. So he brings that beautifully into his work, and he can enhance that whilst using the digital processes, using it in the computer.
I think what you're talking about there, like the difference between his work and the other artists you were just mentioning, I think one of the amazing things about reading this book is that for anyone, I think whether they're new to the industry or have been in it for longer, you're getting to see all these different creative processes just in the very simple one-page description you have of each artist, but you get this awareness through having 100 artists there of all the different ways you can go about creating these designs. And I think that's a really inspiring thing to have just there in one book.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much. And that was definitely something I was aiming for, because ultimately I think that look, I think it can be really hard for people who want to express themselves creatively if they don't know how to get it out there. And if you are shown 100 different ways to do something, then that might give you hope to you know, tap into something. So this is as much about showing where people came from as far as their education and where their inspiration comes from, and actually tapping into being a natural artist, maybe just allowing the art to come out that you have to get out, as opposed to controlling the art from a commercial point of view. I think that admittedly, the artists who are very successful in this space are ones who actually honour their unique voice and unique style. And what eventually happens is they get known for that style. It becomes the thing that you go to them for. And that's when you have to be patient and let your people come to you. So I might be getting a little bit toey and thinking, right, I've got to create all the designs for all the people. Well, no, you don't. Because if you do that, it's blah, blah, blah. You end up turning yourself inside out, and there's no guarantees that you're actually going to satisfy your market. So the best advice is that you stick to what it is that comes naturally, what you love, what you're passionate about. You do it over and over again. You do it 1,000 times, and eventually you get that thing that says, that's such and such's work. And when you're looking at this book, you will see that the different styles come out. It's obvious. I was so shocked because I'm on socials a lot. I thought there's a lot of same out there. I thought, oh God, there's another such and such, and there's another. But you know what? This book has shown me that there's such diversity, And what
Such a broad range, yeah.
Oh, huge. And what it's also shown me is how bloody clever people are. I mean, they've really just, like, you know, I was looking at Clara Shino's work the other day. She's a very talented artist in the book who's got Station with Earth Greetings. And he's done that on the computer. It's just, her color management and her lines are so precise. And she does it with a paintbrush. She uses gouache. And watching her process is magical. It's so beautiful. So her genius is the fact that she understands color, she understands placement and flow. And then when she completes an artwork and then she takes it to Earth Greetings and go, wow, that's fantastic, and they put on 1,000 cards and put it out to the marketplace, it's because it's her signature. It's her signature artwork. It's her signature use of color. It's her signature use of the Australian flora, her interpretation of it. I mean, I see Kirsten's joined us here tonight. Kirsten's really, really come into her own in the last couple of years because she's really honed into this very, very Kirsten-like look on her florals. And I can't go past one of hers without saying that's her work. Now, if you saw that against someone else's, you might, oh, there's similarities. But there's not. It's literally her work. And that's why, you know, she's been so successful recently getting her work into spotlight, because she's got this collection of work that is definitely hers. It's definitely recognizable and extremely marketable. So she's going gangbusters. So good for her.
I really love the quote you have from, I think, Cecilia Moko. I think I also saw in the audience.
Yes, I know you're there.
That kind of covers onto that, speaking about creating work which truly excites you and create what you love. The market is so wide, you will undoubtedly find the niche who will adore the work you love to make. And goes on. So that was one of the key messages you really wanted to come through with the book. Were there any other key messages that you really wanted to communicate to pattern creators or service designers?
Well, look, I mean, the book is on so many different levels. I mean, for me, it's kind of was a cathartic process about embracing Australian design, because I think that we've got something quite extraordinary and unique outside of the world stage. And also, just imagine we're kind of other from the rest of the world. We don't fit in with the traditional artwork that comes out of America or you know, the Scandinavian artwork. I mean, whilst some of our artists touch on that and use that kind of look, that folk art look, or those and so forth, we have some very unique looks, and I think that's what makes us quite different. So when you look at this book, there's a real bold, strong graphic and so many beautiful, you know, things that come out in it that talk about us as people as well as anything. But what were we talking about again? Oh, the message, yes. Yeah. The message, community, very important. Look, I'm all for community. I think that in my experience of being in this business, anytime that I've come across someone who I wanted to learn from or be mentored by, that there was a generosity that came from that. And I think it comes down to, if you want to learn, then you have to also give. So the more you learn, you share, and then it kind of comes back three-way, tenfold, whatever. And so for me, a lot of the people who are in this book, I have a commitment to practice. They have called it their unique style. They love what they do. They're really into it. They're quite, some people are quite evangelical about what they do because they're just so passionate and love it, and they're taking to socials and they're sharing videos and sharing techniques. That's fantastic, because that means that the next wave of designers that come through will be able to take note and see that it's possible. So if anything that you take away from this book, it's about potential. It's about the possibility. It's about talking about where we're going with digital. I mean, that for me is the massive thing. And I keep coming back to it, because for me, it's like this, you know, how we talk about the democratization of creative industry. Well, this right here speaks volumes about where we're going, because all of a sudden that person who might be a little bit introverted at home, has something beautiful to share with the world, has got an avenue for doing that, an avenue for creating a business, which means they can have an income, which means that they can share their art with the world. I mean, I find that extraordinary. It's extraordinary. And there's all these platforms that are out there for us to do that now. So when you're sitting at home, you create this beautiful artwork. It doesn't matter if you think it's beautiful, great, share it with the world and they might love you for it. But you might start, pushing yourself and pushing yourself and pushing yourself. And all of a sudden you find your people. Wow. And that's a global audience now. We're not talking about the women down at the CWA hall anymore. We're talking about everyone in the world watching you and loving your artwork. Some people might freak out at the possibility of that, but I love the idea of it. I think it's just mind-blowing.
It's marvelous,
the fact that I can get feedback from someone on the other side of the world. It is. I mean, and also the sharing of ideas. One of the concepts that I wanted to just touch on briefly when I was coming up with the genesis of the idea of the book was, and this is my woo-woo moment, is the idea that we have a creative consciousness. And it's an idea that was introduced to me when I was reading a book called A Day Book of Comfort and Joy by Sarah Van Brethnack about did a journal for every day.
Rachel, I'm sorry. Sorry, you just cut out just as you mentioned the book's name. Do you mind repeating that?
Did I cut out? Okay, sorry. Can you hear me?
You've been perfect. It's first time it's cut out. It's okay. Oh no.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Sorry, guys. I don't know how much you heard of that.
Yeah, from the book. When you mentioned the book that inspired you.
Yes. Sarah Van Brethnack talked about lessons, and she talked about a creative consciousness, and it's the only way I could make sense of the fact that if you have an idea, 6 months later you see someone come up with exactly the same idea, and you think, how the hell did they know what's in my mind? It's because we're all kind of in this world at the moment, and we're kind of like influenced by different things, and then ideas pop up to us because that's, we're influenced by the media or fashions or color palettes or whatever it is that's around us. But if you have an idea or a truly unique idea, it's up to us whether we give birth.
We may have lost Rachel for a moment there. So I'm just going to ask if the audience can bear with us. It did come back last time, so I think Rachel's having a bit of technical issue at her end. Jen, you're okay over there, are you?
Yeah. I'm also not seeing Rachel.
Yeah. So it's just Rachel that we've lost. So yeah, hopefully she's gone, and we're going to let her back in. So bear with us, everyone. We'll just get Rachel back in. As someone in the audience says, someone has turned Netflix on. That's true. That's what happens when someone in your household turns Netflix on. Absolutely.
Of course, right when she was telling us her beautiful,
big
idea.
It always happens, but just bear with us. We'll try and get her back on. No doubt. There we go. It's just, there she is. Unmute. There we go.
Hello. I'm going to send a message to my children throughout the household, because that's how we communicate these days. Get off your bloody devices. I'm doing it right now. I told them to get off it. Now, obviously, the half an hour get off your devices limit was reached, and they decided that no, they're not going to let Mum have her hour on Zoom. They're going to just.
We've got you back now, so that's great. I'm going to mute myself, and we'll go back into it.
Thanks, Chrissy. Anyway, so going back very, very quickly to that idea of creative consciousness, there's a book that I was telling you about, but moving on from that idea was another book that was done by Elizabeth Gilbert a couple of years ago called Big Magic, and she takes that concept to another level where if we have an original idea, and then we need to do something with it, then it'll stay with us. But if we have it for long enough, someone else might come along and say, you know, that's ideas on my ledger as well. So you either give it up if you're not going to do anything with it, you do it graciously, or you work with it and you bring it to head. And my idea was Pattern Pulse. 4 years I've been sitting on this, and it wasn't until I actually went to a charity event last year and heard this gorgeous Brisbane author called Kaylee Jeffrey, who wrote Under the Lino, talk about this concept. She actually talked about how she read Big Magic, and her idea she sat on for 20 years before she was actually in a position to do anything about it. So for me, hearing her story lit that desire in me to actually action my idea. And so roll forward to last November, I asked myself that question: what's the one thing that would really make you feel sad if you didn't do it? And it was this book. And then I started sending emails out to everyone, and then COVID happened. So I was almost like poised and ready to go. And that's why I was able to turn it around so quickly.
You had all that time. You mentioned that you had some slides that showed us a little bit about the creation of Pattern Pulse. Would now suit to share them?
It would suit, and I can just run through that quickly with you. I know that how are we going for time? We've got about 10 minutes before we open up for questions. Yeah, so I'll do the share screen. I don't know whether this is going to work, but I'll just quickly have a quick chat about it. So I'm going to just share this screen with you and go to view and full screen. So here we are. Right, so this is just me kind of blurting out some ideas around the genesis of the idea. So the picture on the right is a diary entry in my ideas book from 4 years ago. And as you can see, that little logo at the top there quite literally is the one I've used in the book today for Pattern Pulse, because I almost gave, you know, the idea came to me fully formed. And from that was this, you know, kind of mind map of ideas that kind of launched out from it. And apart from the fact that it's just got a blistering alliteration with the double P's, I needed to just tap into what it was and the kind of world that Pattern Pulse was. And it was about support for artists. It was about, because my business mind, whilst I was becoming the artist, I was also seeing the support system around the industry, and there isn't very much. And we go to Facebook chat rooms and things like that to try and get ideas and find out what the go is with pricing and how to go about learning certain things. But as far as this little world, it's pretty much the Wild West, and you kind of, you know, it's up to you how savvy you are and how much you build your business, because there's no real book. And so this was my thinking, this is my blurting it out on the page. So that's the original. And that's the two books underneath that I kind of referred to just before.
Oh, yeah.
So the genesis of the idea came from that idea 4 years ago, married with the fact that this is the book that I would have liked to have bought when I first started my journey. It kind of was a bit of a no-brainer in that regard. I just wrote the book that I would have liked.
Oh, Rachel. Sorry. One of the things you mentioned to me prior was that you think that there's a challenge for starting out designers in seeing, you see a lot of the end product of what people do, and in understanding that you as a starting out designer, you're obviously, your journey is taking place differently. Is that something you feel like you were able to explore through Pattern Pulse?
Oh, most definitely. We go off in different tangents. I mean, I think that ultimately a lot of people who are practicing surface designers have got this very clear vision that they would like to see their artwork in some guise out in the world. Okay, so it's about putting your mark on the world. It's about expressing yourself through art. There is a definite drive. So where that starts from and how that starts could be you just picking up a pen or a paintbrush for the first time, but it eventually arrives at this point. There are fine artists in the book who start off doing work on canvases, and then they've gone in this route because they see that it's where they want to be. It's a pleasing outcome in their career as part of their journey. So I don't know if that answers your question, Genevieve, but I think the journey of it in and of itself is a remarkable one. It has been for me, because it revealed to me that this is exactly where I needed to be.
Brilliant.
And so I guess going back to this this PDF, it also taps into the fact that whilst I am a surface designer and therefore I could talk about being in the industry, and I think that's probably the special ingredient in this whole book book thing, is that I could speak with clarity about what it is to be part of this industry. And the person's story in the book fleshes out what it is to be part of the industry, little snippets and little tidbits and little process suggestions, and this is where my career started and this is how I've ended up, therefore you can do this too. So there's a very much a mapping out of a career that you can see as you go through the book. So for me, also being in the industry, I also needed to tap into the fact that if I wanted this to happen, because believe me, I sent my synopsis for this book off to many of the publishers I thought would be interested in it. And look, I think that game sucks, because I didn't even get an email back. And I did my research beforehand. I did all the right things. And to actually not even get an idea acknowledged that you think's got merit is really quite wounding. So I had to have a good talk to myself and say, well, if this book is going to out no matter what, I just have to find a way. And that's when I considered self-publishing. Didn't know a cracker about it. So I've been on a very big learning curve on top of my own journey to become a surface designer. I'm now, I can talk to you about self-publishing, but because I've done that, because I had to get this book out, I had to tell the story about the artist, and the only way I could do it was to do it this way. So yeah.
That's amazing, yeah. And I'm amazed by also you talking about how quickly you actually developed the book in reality.
Yeah, sure. It was pretty clear to me what I wanted to do. Look, I have not reinvented the wheel with this book. It's pretty straightforward. The design, everything about the layout, its concept is very simple, because it's the artwork and the stories about the artist that write the book. So all I've pretty much done is brought it all together. I've not done anything more than that. I've organised and wrangled and harangued 100 artists into submitting their artwork and working to a deadline. I took their answers to some questionnaires. The most technical thing I did set up was actually a submissions platform. So I did do that, yay me. And then got all the information in images, words, compiled it, just worked 8 hours a day for many, many months to get it all happening. I was quite determined. And then it all happened quite quickly towards the end. It was done. And then I was editing it, and then I was finishing it, and then I was trying to work out how to publish it. And there you go. It happened, within 10 months from start to finish.
Amazing. I did have another question. I wanted to kind of almost rewind a little bit to where you mentioned that the unique place that Australians have within the design market and the surface design market. I felt that throughout the book, you see a lot of mention of place really influencing the different artists and designers. And the other thing that was really prevalent in a lot of the visual designs you saw was a lot of like Australiana imagery. Is that trend one that's particularly current? Because you also mentioned in it that surface design is really relevant to trends really influence it. Is that a particular now trend, or is that something that's just has been sitting within this industry for a while?
Oh, look, I would have to say that this is a golden age, a golden time right now. Because you could see, I'm just going to stop sharing this screen. I'm just going to come back out of that. Sorry. Look, if you've been watching what's been happening, you would have seen that there's been an emerging of Australiana happening and bubbling away for the last 3 or 4 years. Now, when we think about Australiana, it's that, Nana tea towel that we've all gotten lurking at the back of our tea towel drawer. And we needed to have that jollied the hell up. And so that's what's happened in the last few years. We've kind of come into this new phase of really dynamic, graphic, classic Australiana that we can call our own, that's not naff. And so it's beautifully segued into the homewares market with someone like Jocelyn Prowse, who's just kind of led the charge into, bringing Australiana bird life, flora and fauna in graphic style into our homes. So you can see it on the light shades, you can see it on the bedding, you can see it. It's almost it's rife, it's everywhere. And so from that comes these spin-offs and interpretations and that. So all of a sudden you've got people like Pete Cromer, who's been doing his beautiful interpretations of Australian birds for many, many years, but his work is now extremely relevant. So people like Maxwell and Williams will come in and say, right, we want your birds on our cups, and then they'll mass produce them and send them out to market. So yes, there is I would say a golden time at the moment where...
And it's a new sort of gentle national identity.
I would say so too, yes. We're kind of, we're moving into a nice... Oh, look, and it amazes me. What I'm particularly interested in as well is seeing what comes out of not only just the flora and fauna, because we can interpret an animal, we can interpret a flower, we can interpret a leaf in a different way. It's the application of colour as well. We're kind of getting away from those true representations of the landscape and going into these really bold and bright colours. I'll use Clara Shino's work as an example again, because she puts crazy, beautiful pastels with these bright colours. And that's the Australiana that I would like to be associated with. That's the Australiana I'd like to bring into my household, because it just turns the idea on its head. It's not naff anymore. It's actually quite beautiful and desirable. So yes, we're in this phase, and who knows where we'll be. We could be doing, well, what did we have? We had sloths come in a couple of years ago. I mean,
oh yes,
we have them around here, but we'll continuously pick apart what it is to be Australian. Now, you might see there's a great label in Melbourne called Make Me Iconic, and they've done things like take the iconic parts of the landscape, like I don't even know what the name of it, the little skipping vinegar girl, like items that are part of the Australian culture, like the meat pie or the fairy bread or whatever it is. People are picking apart those iconic parts of our childhood and our lifestyle, and they're bringing it into our design. And it's watching those artists who do that and going, wow, it's fantastic, but it's also extremely it's almost like inevitable. You're almost thinking, well, someone was going to do it eventually.
that coalescing of the idea again.
Exactly. It's just when it's going to happen. So
yeah.
I just love seeing that evolve. It's inspiring and it's crazy, and seeing those Buffalo Bill ice creams come to life on a bit of fabric that someone's wearing on a dress. Seriously, we've come a long way.
The nostalgia appeals as well. Yeah. Oh,
So,
yeah.
I don't know if you wanted to open up to questions now.
Yeah, I thought if we'll pass over to Chrissy and then see if there are any questions from the audience.
We definitely have one to start with, actually, Rachel. So this one's from Julie, who said, I've had some success in the US with a pattern agency, but it was very competitive, and I ended up working back as a graphic designer for a national company. Surface design is so competitive and never guaranteed. How do you recommend getting your designs noticed among a myriad of talented designers? And also, what are your recommendations for introverts to put yourself out there? Because obviously that's really difficult.
Oh, look, I hear you. It's Julie, I really struggle. I think that a lot of artists are in by nature people who can be quite private, and they like to create art, and therefore they're in their own little world. So having to sell yourself or become the brand that is behind the artwork is, that's not necessarily the way you want to go, because sometimes the people who post the most and make the most noise and get their face out there are the ones who are basically selling the work. And I guess that's kind of where the double-edged sword of socials. It might mean that someone could see your artwork on a social media platform one day and engage you and buy your work commercially that day. And that's happened to me. Seriously, I can't believe that has, but someone's seen it, contacted me. I've created a license that day and I've sold that piece of artwork. That's what social media can do for you. But going back to Julie's question, yes, it is a competitive landscape. My only advice is that you go back to the original idea, is that you stick to your style and you do it really, really well. You always have a portfolio of work that's current and up to date so that when someone does come knocking, you're ready to go. I think it's really important to have a tiered approach to running a business if you're trying to make an income. And my tiered approach would be that you have a portfolio of designs that are your lower level ones that are kind of like your eye candy that you use for socials, and that therefore you sell at a cheaper rate. And then you've got your higher level password protected portfolio work that you only deal with licensing companies and on a commercial basis. I find that if you were to have many different income streams in this space, then you might be able to cover yourself overall. Because I think that once you put all your eggs into one basket, it can be extremely hard. As you say, very competitive. So maybe it might be about looking at your artwork and seeing how it could cross over into a different market, whether it does transfer over into stationery. Stationery is kind of like this loose ebb and flow market, and there's a lot of crossovers from people in this space who do patterns going into that market as an extra form of income. I hate to say it, but teaching, but then again, that kind of turns into, if you're an introvert, you don't want to be doing that either. You could do a Skillshare class and never show your face. I suppose that's one way around it, but I don't know. But yeah, look, it is hard. And my advice is, always stick to what you know. And unfortunately, that's why people have a side hustle. That's why they have a part-time job while they're doing this, because I think it's rare to be able to rely on this as a sole income. And that's the truth of it. And those people who do, they might find that they're doing it really, really well for 5 years, and then they might not be in vogue anymore. So they have to do something different, So it's a hard game. It's a difficult journey. So that's my advice, Julie.
That's really good advice. That sounds like the sort of advice that you offer any artist, really, is to make sure you've got a side hustle, you're making some money out of that, and that you're doing your work that you're passionate about as well. So that sounds really good.
Absolutely. And
sorry.
Yeah.
I've got a question from Sylvia here I could ask for you, if you like. Sure. So this is definitely for you, because I don't know what she's talking about. From Adobe CC, which tool is the one that you use the most to learn about technical repeats that you mentioned?
Oh, absolutely. Look, because I'm a watercolor artist, I prefer to use Photoshop when I'm creating my technical repeats. If I was entering the game now, I would be looking at some of the new technologies that are coming out with Photoshop. Recently, they tried to include a pattern maker, like an add-on. My understanding is that it hasn't been as popular as they thought, because they were appealing to professionals. But those tools are fantastic. If you were starting out, I would definitely be doing some courses. So with Skillshare for Photoshop, learning how to do a half drop repeat, I actually just I do what's called a diamond repeat. That's how I do it. And I'm more than happy people to contact me after the class, and I can send you a little tutorial on how I do that, because I've already created that. So if that helps someone, then that's fine. The alternative is that you use Illustrator, which has got a pattern maker. It's got a functionality where you actually create a pattern, and it allows you to do dimension and half drop, just all the different variations with spacing and so forth. It has that possibility. And so from my understanding, I don't do this, but some people like to create their artwork, clean it up in Photoshop, then import it into Illustrator and create the repeat using the pattern maker tool in Illustrator because it's so easy. It's just that bridging between Photoshop and Illustrator. The only thing I say about Illustrator is for people like me is as soon as you convert your artwork to trace, if you trace it or you lose a lot of clarity with the tonality in the watercolors, so it doesn't necessarily work for someone like me. But if you worked in flat color like gouache, or you were a line drawer, or you were using, pencil or crayon, you could probably get away with it in Illustrator more so than you would someone like myself. So the answer to your question would be that I would use the pattern maker, create a pattern option in Illustrator for creating repeats. Yeah.
That's look, that sounds fantastic. It sounds like something that I would never be able to learn to use, but it does sound quite amazing. And looking at your pattern behind you, when you said that you use a diamond pattern, I can now see the diamond pattern.
Well, no, this is the other beautiful thing about it. Once you start looking at patterns, you can get a bit obsessed. You want to know where the repeat finishes and where it starts. And at the end of the day, if you're going to be sending a piece of artwork to someone, they want a square or a rectangle, because what happens is it gets tiled together and you literally slot one next to each other. And so how you create that artwork and how it tiles out depends on the genesis, well, right at the beginning, how you set up your files. That's another conversation entirely. So let's not go there. But yes, you can see something in what's behind me. So thanks,
absolutely
Chris.
Amazing. It's really startling, because I never I don't know anything about pattern making, and it's a whole new world really of things that you can kind of look at, see when you don't know that they're there in the first place. It's amazing. Look, have we got any other questions from the audience before we finish off? We just have time for one more if anyone in the audience has another question. Just giving them a minute. But if not, oh no, there is, someone's just telling me to look at the moon behind me. It's a very lovely moon out there. That's true. I'm sure you can make that, the night sky.
Oh, look, I'd love, if we don't have any more questions, maybe open up to any of the artists. We've got artists amongst our audience today who are featured in the book. If there was anything that anyone wanted to share, just had a moment to share about their experience of working with me to do the book, or how it makes them feel to know that they're part of the community, that might be a nice way to finish off the conversation.
Yeah, well, look, because
I don't know if anyone...
It's a reasonably small group. This may end in chaos if I do this. I haven't done this before, but I can open it so that people can unmute themselves, and we could have, if anybody wants to take the floor just for a minute or so, I will cut you off though if it goes for too long. So I'm just going to allow people to unmute themselves. So if anybody in the audience was a part of the book and wants to talk a little bit about that, is there anyone out there who was a part of the book who wants to just speak? Now, especially now that we've got a frozen Rachael again. I think.
We have you again, Rachael.
Have we got Rachael? I'll just unmute Rachael again.
Teenagers again. Sorry, guys. Yeah.
That's all right. That's okay. Look,
Daniela.
We are close to time, so what we might do is just now that I've allowed people to unmute themselves, we might do a sign off, and if people want to unmute themselves for a final clap, please feel free to do so. It's such an incredible thing to create a book like this. It's amazing that it happened so quickly for you, because it looks like there's years and years and years of kind of putting it together to in it. But of course, you're a designer, and so you have so many of those skills already. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece of work, and I have shared that link online. So if you do want to purchase a copy, you can just head online and use event, EVENT, and that will get you 10% off, not just this book, but any other book you put in your cart that isn't already on discount. And Rachael, have you got plans for another book? Has this killed you? Have you just Never to do it again? Or?
Oh no, I'm literally just coming up for air now, and just like I have to clean my house and feed my children and give them some love again. So I just need to kind of just settle down. But yeah, I'm definitely going to do a volume 2. And there's a couple of really awesome New Zealand artists I want to bring in. So I'm going to open up our bubble and introduce some New Zealand artists into the next one, because, you know, I think we've all got some very similar things going on. So watch this space.
Yeah, fantastic. We'll have you back on again when you have the New Zealand artists on. That'd be great.
Thank you.
So
Thank you so much.
If people want to unmute themselves for a final clap, please feel free to do so. And
Thank you.
Rachel and Dan. Thank you very much, Rachel.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks,
Rachel.
guys. So nice to see you all. Thank you for dropping in. I can see some familiar faces and names. I really appreciate you turning up and being here for me. It's really beautiful. So thank you, guys.
Well done, Rachel.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you.
Thanks so much. See you guys later. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
Lovely to meet you guys. Thank you very much. Bye.